My husband brought home a young woman, intending to take her as a secondary wife. They say she's from another time. Though I don't understand what time travel means, I still agreed with a smile. I placed the divorce papers before my husband. Since that's the case, you two can get out of my house. Today marks the return of my husband, Gu Hongyuan, to the capital. His term as an official in the provinces has ended, and he comes home today. Just as I was about to go greet him, I heard the maid Hongye announce that my husband had also brought back a young woman. Hongye added that Gu Hongyuan and this woman seemed inseparable, standing very close together. Hongye was quite agitated as she spoke. I heard that scoundrel. Ahem, my husband say he'll definitely give that woman a proper status. Miss, you mustn't swallow your pride. Hearing this, I hurried to a cabinet and pulled open one of its drawers. I retrieved the divorce papers I had prepared long ago. Stepping into the front hall, I indeed saw Gu Hongyuan and a gentle-mannered woman gazing at each other tenderly. He whispered something in her ear, making her giggle softly. Only then did he notice me, rising slowly to his feet. You're here, Gu Hongyuan said, his expression unreadable. I actually have something to discuss with you. I have something to discuss with you too, but you go first. Since we were divorcing anyway, letting him speak first wouldn't hurt. This young lady is June Rilon, my savior. She's alone now. I intend to marry her as a co-wife. Prepare the arrangements. June Rilon smiled at me. You must be the elder sister? In our customs, all are equal. I shan't bow to you, it would feel too formal. Gu Hongyuan nodded. It's fine. You're already carrying our child. He turned back to me. You mentioned having something to discuss earlier. What is it? Good news, of course, I said with a smile, handing him the divorce papers. Sign these. I'm setting you free. Gu Hongyuan took them, his expression darkening. Why can't you tolerate Rilon? I've already said she's an equal wife, she won't threaten your position. Wouldn't it be better if I made room for you both? Seeing Gu Hongyuan so furious, I was utterly baffled. June Rilon, noticing his anger, tugged at his sleeve. Trust sister Song, she means well. Why not agree, Hanglang? But... Gu Hongyuan looked troubled. June Rilon offered a faint smile. In our homeland, the custom of monogamy still exists. But I wouldn't dream of stealing another's love, nor wish to put Hanglang in a difficult position. That's why I resolved before coming that I'd gladly share one husband with sister. Yet since sister is so magnanimous, willing to grant me and Hanglang our wish, it truly is the best of both worlds. Hearing this, Gu Hongyuan felt a pang of pity for June Rilon. You've suffered so much. Then he turned to me and snapped, You Li. Could you learn a thing or two from Rilon's maturity? Stop being so unreasonable. I was baffled by his outburst. How is accommodating you two being unreasonable? Xia Zhu, go pack your husbands. Oh, no, pack Lord Gu's belongings. Hearing my words, June Rilon, who had seemed so confident moments before, suddenly looked stunned. My personal maid, Xia Zhu, responded promptly, right away. She then led several servants into the inner chambers. June Rilon stammered, this. Why are you packing for Hanglang? I gave her a puzzled look. While everything in this household was earned by me, my husband does own a few garments. Packing his things is perfectly normal. But Hanglang must have a share in the household assets. I chuckled. Silly girl, that brocade robe and silk skirt you're wearing look quite fine, they must have cost dozens of taels. Your husband bought them for you, didn't he? But he's just a 7th-rank magistrate posted to the provinces, earning no more than 40 or 50 taels a year. When he took up his post, I was the one who gave him 10,000 taels. Tell me, where would he have gotten the money himself? Just then, Xia Zhu emerged carrying a bundle. She tossed it carelessly onto a chair and announced loudly, All of Magistrate Gu's belongings are here, miss. Enough. Money is all you see. Gu Hongyuan's face turned ashen. Mark my words, whether you approve or not, I am determined to marry June Rilon. Divorce is out of the question. If you refuse, you may leave this household yourself. Hanglang, Don't get so angry, Jun Rilon murmured, wrapping her arms around Gu Hengyuan. Sister must be saying these harsh words because she loves you so deeply. Jun Rilon then looked at me earnestly. Sister, I know you're furious, but love doesn't follow a first-come first-served rule. The one not loved is the mistress. Hanglang, out of respect for your years of marital bond, can't bear to divorce you. He lets you endure gossip outside, that's already deep affection and profound loyalty. Sister, please don't hold a grudge anymore. Besides, if I may say so, this household's assets should actually include Hangling's share too. In our customs, marital property is held in common. Though I couldn't grasp what she meant by other woman, I could make out the gist of marital property held in common. I looked back at her sincerely. Thank you for your concern, Miss June. I can support myself. Besides, most people in this world are reasonable. As long as I act according to my conscience, I believe I won't invite gossip. As for the joint property you mentioned, you must have misunderstood. When my husband and I married, he was penniless, not even a dowry to offer. It was I who brought the Song family's assets into this household as my dowry. And here, the custom is that a bride's dowry remains her private property, the groom's family has no claim to it. Not to brag, but during my father's lifetime, the Song family's holdings spanned the nation, salt, iron, tea, plus profitable ventures like money houses and inns across the land. After I took over, I expanded and prospered them further. As for why I married Gu Hengyuan despite my family's wealth, that traces back to the friendship between my father and his father. A bond forged by the touch of unborn children's fingers, I had no choice. Alas, my father never saw what kind of man his future son-in-law would become. Truthfully, when we first wed, I harbored hopes for him. But Gu Hengyuan remained perpetually distant. I wrote a divorce petition, asking if his heart belonged to another. If so, I would grant him freedom. He told me not to jump to conclusions, that we had all the time in the world. I agreed with him then, but I didn't tear up the divorce papers. Instead, I tucked them away. Little did I know they'd come in handy today. June Rilon seemed to have held her breath, her face flushing crimson. I watched her with concern. What if this girl couldn't catch her breath and suffocated? Just as I considered having Steward Fong apply some folk remedy, Gu Hengyuan unexpectedly softened his tone. Yuli, I know you're angry and find this hard to accept. I won't hold it against you. I'll take Rilon to rest now. Tonight, Rilon and I will stay in the Wild Goose Stew courtyard. We'll discuss the matter of taking a secondary wife tomorrow. As he spoke, he ordered the servants to prepare the Yenlu courtyard. But the servants stood frozen, as if deaf to his words. Only my other maid, Vlayu, brought me a cup of Mingqian tea, saying she feared I might be parched. Gu Hengyuan clenched his fists and said coldly, Song Yuli, must you make this so unbearably awkward? Just then, a steward entered the front hall to inform me, the old lady has arrived. Well, what a coincidence! This spared me the trouble of sending someone to notify her. In the 4 years since Gu Hengyuan and I were married, my mother-in-law had never been particularly pleased with me. She believed I, a mere merchant's daughter, had married above my station to her son, a Jinshur graduate who'd been assigned as a 7th-ranked county magistrate. Well, now that she'd heard about my divorce from Gu Hengyuan, she'd surely breathe a sigh of relief. Sipping my preaching Ming tea, I felt genuinely pleased. When mother-in-law Zhou arrived, she was slightly out of breath. Her eyes glistened with tears as she looked at her beloved son. Hengyuan, you're back! Gu Hengyuan rushed forward 2 steps upon seeing his mother, about to prostrate himself. While I was away, mother managed the household affairs. Thank you for your hard work. The bamboo, willow, and maple leaves beside me all looked unimpressed, almost rolling their eyes. I didn't mind much. After all, the old lady spent her days picking out clothes and jewelry, visiting neighbors, and socializing, quite the energy-sucking routine. Madame Zhou hastily protested, It's nothing, nothing. Your official duties must be far more taxing. I thought it was manageable enough. Besides the 10,000 taels I'd prepared for Gu Hengyuan before his departure, I also had several thousand taels sent to him annually. Look at him now, he has enough to keep mistresses and deck them out in gold and silver. Frankly, Gu Hengyuan didn't seem to be working too hard. And who might this be? Madame Zhou asked, her gaze turning to Jun Rilon. Father was just about to report this to mother. Gu Hunyuan introduced Jun Rilon to Lady Zhou, praising her as gentle, virtuous, and a master of household management, letting her praise soar to the heavens. These past 3 years while I was away, Rilon has taken care of everything. We share mutual affection, and she is now with child. I wish to take this opportunity back in the capital to bring Rilon into our family. Good. Good. Lady Zhou flushed with excitement upon hearing of Jun Rilon's pregnancy. Jun Rilon looked troubled. But Sister Song seems reluctant. At this, Mrs. Zhou finally noticed me, her daughter-in-law, whom she had ignored since my arrival. Her expression darkened. You didn't even rise to greet your mother-in-law when she entered? Is this the upbringing of the Song family? Let me tell you, after 4 years of marriage to Hunyuan without bearing an heir, you should be ashamed and reflect on your shortcomings. Now that Rilon is carrying a child, you ought to embrace her generously. That is the magnanimity expected of a family matriarch. Besides, she would enter as a co-wife, posing no threat to your status. I protested, you're doing me an injustice. I offered to divorce my husband voluntarily to make way for Miss June, but he refused. I pointed to the bundle Xiaozhu had packed. Look, I've already had his clothes packed up. After all, he'd been serving as an official for 3 years, important books and such weren't kept at home anyway. Madame Zhou's eyes widened instantly. You want a divorce, yet you're packing Hunyuan's things? My eyes widened too, because this is the Song family residence. Madame Zhou's face turned the color of liver. This is outrageous. What kind of woman are you? Because your husband wants to take a concubine, you want to drive him out of the house? I won't allow it. I hurriedly assured her, rest assured, I would never separate you from your son. Servants! Go to Jingchen courtyard and pack up the old lady's belongings too. You. Lady Zhou gasped for breath. Gu Hunyuan hurried to support his mother, gently patting her back to help her catch her breath. The maid behind Lady Zhou also stepped forward to steady her from the other side. Xiaozhu reminded me, but miss, the old lady discarded her own clothes and jewelry the very next day after coming to our home. Everything in Jingchen courtyard was purchased with your help. Ah. Well then, keep 2 pieces. At these words, Lady Zhou fainted instantly. The weight of her jewelry and robes was considerable. Gu Hunyuan could barely support her and ended up crouching down with her. Song Yue! Gu Hunyuan shouted, his eyes red. My mother is your mother-in-law, after all. How could you treat her like this? I was also deeply troubled. Lulio, fetch a physician at once. And speaking of it, is it wise for a patient to wear such heavy gold and silver ornaments and such weighty garments? Lulio answered loudly, yes, mistress. I'll help the old lady remove these items first. No sooner had she spoken than Lady Zhou opened her eyes and, leaning on Gu Hunyuan's support, stood up. I breathed a sigh of relief. You're all right, that's truly wonderful. Madame Zhou trembled with fury but couldn't utter a word. The maid supporting her turned to complain to me, even if the mistress is angry, she shouldn't take it out on the old lady. I eyed her. You look unfamiliar. Who are you? The maid stammered, this servant is Cui Lan. Then, as if remembering something, she emphasized, Master Gu brought me here 3 years ago to serve the old madam. I nodded. Then where have you been receiving your monthly allowance? Cui Lan stammered, this. I've been collecting it from the accounts office every month. Her voice grew fainter. I spoke gently, don't be afraid. I just want to clarify things. This was my oversight, I never resolved the issue of your indenture. I'll hand it over to the matriarch immediately. From now on, you may collect your monthly allowance directly from her. Cui Lan's face paled. Jun Rilon declared with righteous indignation, Sister Song, why must you do this? Quibbling over money with the old lady. You and Henglang are husband and wife. It makes no difference which side the maid collects her allowance from. I shook my head. My husband and I are about to divorce. It's better to keep things clear. Besides, both your names contain the character Lan, a sign of shared fate. Cui Lan could be like a sister to you over there. Jun Rilon flashed a hint of displeasure. Sister Song, however much resentment you hold against me, you shouldn't humiliate me like this, equating me with a servant. I was taken aback. How have I humiliated you? Didn't you say your customs emphasize equality for all? Jun Rolan was instantly at a loss for words. The atmosphere grew awkward. I looked at Gu Hengyuan and said gently, then shall we find time to finalize the divorce? Our marriage was arranged by our elders. You want a divorce now? You're dreaming. Gu Hengyuan gritted his teeth. I won't agree to a divorce. Either I divorce you, or you beg to leave. Xia Zhu muttered contemptuously from the side, Pfft, it's all about our young mistress's money. Gu Hengyuan flew into a rage. Who gave you the right to speak here? Madame Zhou suddenly clapped her thighs and wailed, what a calamity. How did the Gu family end up with such a jealous daughter-in-law, bringing nothing but turmoil to our household? After all these years of hard work for this family, I'm accused of coveting my daughter-in-law's wealth. Who wants her filthy money? Just because she has a little, she looks down on everyone. Well, there wasn't exactly turmoil in the household, was there? Aside from those four, everyone else lived quite harmoniously under my management. Fine, I conceded reluctantly. Then we won't divorce. Gu Hengyuan and the others hadn't expected me to change my mind so quickly, staring at me in stunned disbelief. Xia Zhu and the others looked anxious, but I just waved them off. Have someone tidy up that courtyard in the northern corner. It'll be for Mother and the others to live in. Gu Hengyuan froze, then erupted in anger. You've gone too far. That courtyard is for storing junk. How can anyone live there? There's no kitchen, how will they eat? At least it's livable. Many people don't even have a courtyard to call their own. I smiled faintly. The servants will tidy it up quickly. As for meals, I'll have the main kitchen prepare a few dishes later. Gu Hengyuan and the others assumed I was just venting and wouldn't actually make them stay in that dilapidated courtyard. But I had already instructed Uncle Feng, the steward, to station guards at every courtyard entrance, with orders to refuse entry no matter what excuses Gu Hengyuan and his group might offer. Unable to enter, they stormed to the gate of my courtyard and began shouting loudly, only to be stopped by my guards as well. Finally, they gave up. According to the servants' report, they ended up staying in that courtyard that was originally used for storing miscellaneous items. But before dinner, Gu Hengyuan came running over to my place again. I approached the gate and saw him standing outside, furious. Song Yue, you've gone too far. You only had the kitchen prepare a few simple dishes and steamed buns. Rulan is pregnant, how can she eat such things? Husband, please don't be angry. Many women outside eat only this during pregnancy. How can those women compare to Rulan? I replied awkwardly, earlier, Mother said she thought you were coveting my money. Of course, I don't believe you're like that. So I instructed the main kitchen, if you order dishes, you must pay accordingly. No payment, no meal. This prevents Mother from misunderstanding that I'm insulting you with my filthy money. You. Husband, you should go tend to Miss June. After all, she's carrying a child. Just then, Hongya came out to call me, Miss, dinner is ready. Only the braised chicken wings are still simmering on the stove. We'll serve them once you begin your meal. Understood, I replied, turning to leave without a glance at Gu Hengyuan's expression. The next morning after breakfast, servants reported that Lady Zhou was shouting in the street, accusing me of mistreating her. When she married into our family, her parents were already deceased. I treated her as my own daughter. For 4 years of marriage, she bore no children, yet I never held it against her. But this time, she has truly crossed the line. When I arrived at the street where Mrs. Zhou was with Xia Zhu and Lu, she was still ranting with great enthusiasm, spittle flying everywhere. No, Gu Hengyuan has been away for 3 years. If I were to conceive, that would be the real horror, wouldn't it? The concubine Hengyuan intends to marry is already pregnant. She couldn't bear that girl's presence and refused to let the kitchen send her meals. I couldn't stand by and said a few words for the girl, and she actually kicked me out of the main courtyard too, making me move to that wretched place. Spotting me, Mrs. Zhou wailed even louder. I had no choice. I pawned my clothes and jewelry to get money for my daughter-in-law to nourish herself. Only then did I notice Lady Zhou was no longer dressed in her finery. She wore coarse hemp garments, her head adorned only with a cheap-looking hairpin, all her jewelry gone. She actually pawned all that? I was astonished. Madame Zhou kept wailing while watching me, a hint of smugness in her eyes. I usually let the elderly servants who'd followed my father long ago manage the Song family's businesses, but I still made a point to visit each shop whenever I had free time. So, most people in the capital who'd ever patronized a Song family shop knew me. Among the onlookers were many who recognized me. Seeing me arrive, they greeted me in unison, "Hello, Boss Song." Though I was married, I always interacted with others as Song Yuelu. After all, the title Mrs. Gu served no purpose whatsoever and did nothing to enhance the Song family's reputation. Fortunately, I frequently made public appearances after my marriage. Over time, everyone came to understand who I truly was, preventing any unnecessary misunderstandings. I smiled and exchanged greetings before turning toward the nearby Fengqing restaurant, one of the capital's premier establishments. And, of course, a Song family enterprise. Madame Zhou froze, likely stunned that her public display of effort had yielded nothing. I ascended to the second floor, took a street-facing private room, ordered several plates of dim sum, and continued watching Mrs. Zhou's performance while eating. Regrettably, Mrs. Zhou might have been too old. She tried to continue wailing and lamenting, but her performance faltered. Just then, a figure burst in, crying out in grief, "Mother!" Ah, it was Gu Hongyuan. Mrs. Zhou wiped her tears as she addressed Gu Hongyuan, "My son, it is your mother who has wronged you. I thought I was fulfilling your father's dying wish by marrying you to this jealous woman. Had I known this would happen, I would have rather." Gu Hongyuan retorted, "This isn't mother's fault. It's all Song Yuli's fault for not understanding propriety. I heard from the servants that she came here. Where is she?" Mrs. Zhou pointed shakily toward the second floor, where I was seated. Seeing Gu Hongyuan about to roar again, I quickly put down my chopsticks and covered my ears. Gu Hongyuan froze for a moment, then bellowed, "Song Yuli, come down here." Before I could respond, a commanding voice boomed, "Who is making such a racket?" The voice seemed to come from the first floor. I sent Lulu down to investigate. Outside, Mrs. Zhou looked displeased, shooting a withering glance toward a certain direction inside the restaurant. When Gu Hongyuan followed her gaze, he seemed startled. He quickly pulled his mother back and bowed respectfully at the restaurant entrance. "Your humble servant greets Magistrate Qi." Was that Gu Hongyuan's superior sitting there? That would complicate matters. Just then, Green Willow returned to the second floor. She informed me that in the direction Gu Hongyuan had bowed, a table held a bearded middle-aged man and a youth dressed in luxurious attire. I decided to go downstairs to investigate. Descending the stairs, it suddenly occurred to me that Gu Hongyuan had only returned yesterday. He should have reported to the Ministry of Personnel this morning. That middle-aged man might be an official he encountered there. Gu Hongyuan had addressed him as Minister Qi. Come to think of it, the current Minister of Personnel did bear the surname Qi. Upon reaching the ground floor, I saw Gu Hongyuan whisper something to Lady Zhou. He then cautiously stated, "I apologize for disturbing your leisure, Your Excellency. Please forgive this interruption." He then tried to pull Zhou away, but she shot me a fierce glare before suddenly kneeling before the middle-aged man. "Minister Qi, you must vindicate this old woman." It turned out he was none other than Qi Zhong, the Minister of Personnel. Seeing such a high-ranking official present, everyone instinctively backed away. Even the waiter passing by my side with a tray grew flustered, his hands trembling slightly. Gu Hongyuan couldn't stop her in time, his face turning pale. "Mother, what are you doing?" Madame Zhou pleaded, "Please, Your Excellency, help me seek justice." Gu Hongyuan's pallor deepened. After 3 years serving as a county magistrate, he had finally returned to the capital but hadn't yet established himself in court circles. If his superior saw him unable to manage his own household affairs, he doubted he'd be promoted to any significant position. Unfortunately, Lady Zhou failed to grasp this point. Qi Zhong's expression remained unchanged as he asked calmly, "Is it the matter you mentioned earlier on the street that you wish this official to adjudicate?" Lady Zhou hurriedly replied, "Precisely, Your Honor. As you know, my daughter-in-law." Qi Zhong raised his hand to interrupt. "I understand." He turned his gaze to me. I stepped forward promptly and curtsied. "This humble maiden, Song Yuli, greets Your Honor." The young man beside Qi Zhong spoke up, "I've long admired the reputation of Madame Song. To see the Song family business thriving so splendidly, I hadn't realized you were so young." Though he interrupted abruptly, Qi Zhong showed no displeasure. That youth possessed sharp, sword-like brows and star-like eyes, radiating extraordinary presence. To speak so boldly before the minister himself, he must be some noble prince or scion. Alas, since the founding of our dynasty, no merchant house has attained the honor of imperial merchant. Despite the vast scale of our Song family's enterprises, we have not received this distinction. Had I been an imperial merchant, I could at least have recognized these dignitaries by sight. Though unfamiliar with them, I dared not speak lightly. I merely replied modestly, "This humble maiden owes her success to ancestral blessings and the united efforts of our stewards and clerks." Qi Zhong smiled faintly and said, "This matter falls outside my jurisdiction. If you wish to settle this properly, there is a place for that." Thus, we were escorted to the Shuntian prefecture office. The prefect of Shuntian had barely taken his seat when Mrs. Zhou began wailing again, recounting nothing more than what had transpired yesterday at home and today on the street. The prefect asked Gu Hengyuan and me if these accounts were true. Gu Hengyuan had initially feared this might jeopardize his career prospects, but now that we were at the Shuntian prefecture, he seemed to have thrown caution to the wind. He declared, "Every word is true, Your Honor. Family matters should not be aired publicly, but my wife is truly unreasonable and uncontrollably willful." The prefect then turned to me, "Does Lady Gu have anything to say?" I hastily replied, "Your Honor, I am being falsely accused. When my husband brought that Miss June home, I immediately expressed my willingness to divorce him, but he stubbornly refused. As for my mother-in-law, she misunderstood me using money to insult her. I admire her noble character, so I instructed the servants to cease wearing gold, silver, jewelry, or fine silk garments that might offend her. Your Honor, don't listen to her nonsense. Our marriage was arranged by our elders, and we've only been wed 4 years. How could we divorce over such a trivial matter? What mother said yesterday was spoken in anger, how could she possibly mean it? Then why have you come to Shuntian prefecture?" Gu Hengyuan hesitated before replying, "Truthfully, this is a private family matter, unworthy of troubling Your Honor. I only wish for domestic harmony, so I may serve the court without distraction." He turned to me. "Yuli, we've been husband and wife for 4 years. I know you're not truly heartless. This is what we'll do, Roland's first child will be registered under your name. You'll have children to bring joy to your life, and the Song family estate will have an heir. It's a win-win solution, don't you think?" But just a moment ago, you called me stubborn and unreasonable." The words burst out of me, "Isn't this just taking advantage of a family without male heirs?" One of the constables snorted with suppressed laughter. The prefect of Shuntian, Minister Qi, and the young man all concealed smiles. Gu Hengyuan's face darkened instantly. I felt this was wrong and added, "I'm sorry, husband. I know you're not truly like this. Why don't we just divorce? You could give Miss June a proper status. Then no one would think you're after my family's money." Madame Zhou looked ready to protest, but perhaps because Gu Hengyuan had cautioned her on the way, she opened her mouth only to hold her tongue. I added, "Besides, you said Miss June is of noble character. She surely wouldn't want to raise a child on my money." The prefect of Shuntian stroked his beard. "In that case, it truly would be inappropriate for Madame Gu to pay." Gu Hengyuan remained silent for a long moment before asking, "If I send Roland elsewhere to prepare for pregnancy, would you agree not to seek a divorce?" This time, I was genuinely startled. Gu Hengyuan wouldn't agree to a divorce even under these circumstances? June Roland, her bundle strapped to her back and eyes brimming with tears, reluctantly left the courtyard she now deemed shabby. Gu Hengyuan held her hands tenderly. "Lanner, rest assured. Once I succeed, I'll bring you back." June Roland sobbed, I believe you, Hangling. Madame Zhou approached. Upon returning home, she changed back into the pawned clothes and jewelry she'd mentioned earlier, standing by with an expression of profound reluctance to part with June Roland. Ah, poor child, driven out while still carrying a child, Madame Zhou wiped away tears. Rest assured, you'll always be my only daughter-in-law. Bear with it for now, we'll definitely drive that wicked woman Song Yuli out of this house. June Roland frowned. But this is Sister Song's property. A wife follows her husband. Since she married Heng Yuan, this estate and all its holdings should rightfully be managed by him. At most, we'll give her a sum of money to live on for the rest of her days. Gu Heng Yuan agreed with Mrs. Zhou's words. He looked at his beloved with concern. Can you truly take care of yourself out here alone? Shall we have Cui Lan accompany you? At this, Cui Lan's face immediately clouded with reluctance. Daring not to speak plainly, she offered a roundabout suggestion, but what about the old madam? Madame Zhou patted her aching waist. Ah, it's all because I'm getting old. Perhaps you shouldn't mind me. Let Cui Lan go and look after you instead. June Roland forced a smile. How could that be? Don't worry, mother, I can take care of myself. And so the three family members lingered in a long, tearful farewell. Right now, I'm in my room eating stewed winter melon with bird's nest. How could I possibly know what happened at the gate of that dilapidated courtyard? Naturally, spies came to report it to me. As for these spies, the story traces back to my great-grandfather's time. Back then, the Song family business had grown to a respectable scale under my great-grandfather's efforts. But then, he caught the attention of unscrupulous rivals. Those men paid to kidnap him. Though he was eventually rescued unharmed, out of caution, my great-grandfather began recruiting martial arts guards and spies from that point on. The guards naturally protected our safety, while the spies were sent out to gather intelligence and prevent further attempts at sabotage. Thus, regularly recruiting trustworthy guards and spies became a tradition in our family, passed down to my generation. During those 3 years, it was those very guards who delivered money and supplies to Gu Heng Yuan. Originally, these spies served the same purpose as the guards, to guard against outsiders. Otherwise, I wouldn't have only learned about Gu Heng Yuan's affairs after he brought people into the house. Had Gu Heng Yuan not stirred up trouble upon his return this time, I would never have deployed the spies against him. After hearing the spies' reports, my suspicions about Gu Heng Yuan only deepened. The conversation they had at the courtyard gate today clearly indicated they were plotting something significant. At the Shuntian Prefecture office today, Gu Heng Yuan refused to agree to a divorce. Our dynasty's laws stipulate that both spouses must consent for a divorce to proceed. This being a family matter, even the prefect of Shuntian and Minister Qi cannot intervene. I certainly made Gu Heng Yuan look quite foolish today, yet he stubbornly clung to his refusal. If it were about my money, he's been remarkably well behaved since returning home. By now, he must have sent June Roland away, yet he hasn't come to discuss letting Lady Zhou return to Jingchen Courtyard. Nor has he mentioned requesting the main kitchen to send them fine wine and delicacies. Gu Heng Yuan still wanted to share a room with me, claiming he wished to mend our marital bond, but I refused, stating he must prove himself for at least half a year. For several days, Gu Heng Yuan behaved himself, leaving early and returning late. Madame Zhou said she would stay at a temple for a while to pray for Gu Heng Yuan's well-being, and then she left. With no money, Gu Heng Yuan had no choice but to send June Roland to a dilapidated house on the street corner to rest and carry her child. The surrounding neighbors included not only peddlers and laborers but also local thugs and ruffians. This can't be blamed on me. I stopped giving him money, but over the past 3 years, I'd sent him 2,000 or 3,000 taels in total. Who knows where Gu Heng Yuan spent it all? Anyway, now he only has a few taels of silver left. Every time Gu Heng Yuan left June Roland's shabby house, she would cling to him in fear. Gu Heng Yuan couldn't bear to leave her either. Had she not been pregnant, he might well have stayed out all night. Thus, each evening when he returned home, he drowned his sorrows in wine. In the courtyard, only Cui Lan remained to attend to him. And as she served him night after night, trouble brewed. Drunk, Gu Heng Yuan mistook Cui Lan for Roland. Cui Lan, half reluctant, half yielding, succumbed. They rolled together in passion. When Chui Lan awoke, she wept softly, declaring she understood Miss Jun's place in Lord Gu's heart and dared not compete. She only begged to remain by his side to care for him. Gu Hunyuan, tender toward her, embraced Chui Lan and comforted her, saying he was plotting a great endeavor. Once it succeeded, he would drive her from the household. Then, Jun Rilan would be the legitimate wife, and Chui Lan would be the concubine. The scout who reported back looked rather grim. Fearing potential repercussions, he had watched the entire scene unfold, leaving him deeply traumatized both physically and mentally. I gave him 50 taels as consolation money, and only then did his expression ease. I had assumed Gu Hunyuan's grand scheme would soon show signs of progress, but unexpectedly, 3 months passed without any movement. Instead, trouble brewed in that dilapidated rear courtyard. After that incident, he and Chui Lan had tasted forbidden fruit and became addicted to it, finding time to be together whenever possible. The household servants, following my instructions, deliberately turned a blind eye to the activities in that courtyard, leading them to believe their actions were perfectly concealed. The result? While Jun Rilan was still struggling to carry her child in that shabby house, Chui Lan was now pregnant again. However, Gu Hunyuan's first reaction upon learning this was to urge Chui Lan to terminate the pregnancy, warning that discovery by me would spell disaster. Chui Lan sobbed and declared she'd adored him ever since he brought her home 3 years ago, but knew her station was unworthy of him. Now, of course, she'd obey him in everything. Hearing the spy's report made me feel queasy. Truthfully, ever since the incident with Jun Rilan, I couldn't care less which Lan he was involved with now. All I wanted was to finalize the divorce quickly. Dragging it out this long had me growing impatient. Watching those scenes daily through spies had already cost me hundreds of taels in consolation silver. Gu Hunyuan came crawling to me, humbly asking if Chui Lan could leave since she'd found living relatives to stay with. I pretended ignorance and agreed, even offering some silver. His face lit up at the mention of money, but when I insisted on handing it over personally, he stammered, saying he could handle it. I didn't call him out and gave him 50 taels. After Gu Hunyuan escorted Chui Lan out of the Song residence, word reached me that Jun Rilan had moved into a nicer house. I laughed out loud right then and there. Seems Gu Hunyuan still values true love after all. Wonder how much of that 50 taels Chui Lan actually got. As for Chui Lan's whereabouts after that, I didn't bother. I just had my spies focus on keeping tabs on Gu Hunyuan. Another month passed before my spies finally uncovered clues about the major undertaking Gu Hunyuan was plotting. That day, they observed Gu Hunyuan leaving duty without seeking out Jun Rilan or any other Lan. Instead, he entered a tavern called Ichuan Wine House. My spy reported he'd intended to follow but spotted several figures resembling secret guards nearby. Not wanting to alert them, he quietly returned. Gu Hunyuan's meager salary clearly couldn't cover such extravagant spending at an inn. Those shadow guards couldn't possibly be hired by him either, they were most likely connected to someone within the establishment. What could Gu Hunyuan's visit to Ichuan Inn today possibly mean? I dispatched several more spies to keep a close watch on Gu Hunyuan. After that day, Gu Hunyuan remained quiet, but suddenly began living lavishly. Jun Rilan's living quarters upgraded from a dilapidated hut to a tiled roof house, and now she's even moved into a 2-courtyard residence. I'll continue pretending to know nothing, though I wasn't foolish enough to just wait for him to slip up. Over these past months, I deliberately cultivated relationships with the capital's noble women and young ladies. The Song family's jewelry, silks, cosmetics, and perfumes were already popular among the circle, and those ladies were familiar with me. Previously, our interactions were merely superficial acquaintances. But after Mrs. Zhou's public outburst months ago, I gained notoriety in another way. Thanks to the solid reputation I'd built with the Song family, these ladies didn't misunderstand me. When they saw me afterward, their eyes held a hint of sympathetic hesitation. This worked perfectly for me. I seized the chance to chat more with them while introducing new merchandise. Before long, I was invited into their courtyards for a cup of tea. During these tea gatherings, I deliberately hinted at the frustration of wanting a divorce but being unable to secure one. Yet I refrained from directly asking for their help. After all, though Gu Hunyuan held a low rank, he was still an official. Moreover, he hadn't committed any overtly excessive acts, at least not publicly. Keeping a concubine wasn't considered a major offense in these circles. But I had already spread the word, and I was confident Gu Hunyuan would soon make his next move. Sure enough, a few days later, after finishing his shift, Gu Hunyuan didn't go to Jun Rulan's quarters. Instead, he came straight to mine. When the announcement arrived, I was indoors. My maid Chen Qin brought out a basin filled with deboned fish, chicken, beef, and vegetables. She asked, "Miss, Big Black only ate a little before going off to play. It's gotten cold now. Should I reheat it? Leave it for now. Who knows when Big Black might want to eat again." Big Black was a large black dog I'd kept these past months. The seller claimed he was excellent at guarding the house, but honestly, with my guards, I felt perfectly secure. Big Black was really just a pet. I stepped to the courtyard gate and saw Gu Hunyuan standing outside, looking haggard as he gazed at me. "Yuli, can we talk properly?" He seemed to find some peculiar charm in standing on opposite sides of the gate. Seeing my lack of response, he offered a bitter smile. "I know I've hurt you these past months. You might not believe it, but it wasn't until 2 days ago that I realized. The one I truly love is you." I quickly covered my face, afraid Gu Hunyuan would see the disbelief written there. But Gu Hunyuan mistook my reaction for being moved. He pressed on. "Back then, I simply couldn't accept my fate being tied to a woman I'd never truly known. That's why I mistakenly thought I felt something for Rulan. In truth, it was just my rebellion against an arranged marriage." I sighed deeply. "Come in." A flicker of joy appeared in Gu Hunyuan's eyes as he followed me inside. His expression softened with affection when he spotted the dog bowl on the small table. "I knew it. Without me by your side, you wouldn't even eat properly. How can this be? Though you have fish and meat, it's far too coarse. Go to hell. Who do you think you're calling a dog? I know you might not trust me yet, so I'll endure the same hardships you've faced these past days." He sat down at the small table and motioned for Chen Qin to bring chopsticks. "Yuli, let's eat this together." This time, Chen Qin didn't wait for my permission. She promptly fetched the chopsticks. He mistook this for the maid accepting him. Judging by the smile on his face, he probably thought she'd followed his order because I'd instructed her to. Gu Hunyuan was so focused on impressing me that he completely missed the servants around him stifling their laughter. And I couldn't even let a smile show. What a torment. I could only force myself to turn away. "I'm not hungry yet. You eat by yourself." Perhaps that dog bowl looked too luxurious. Gu Hunyuan didn't suspect a thing. He dug into the meat dish Dehei had eaten, devouring it with gusto. He must have been genuinely hungry. No wonder, he probably avoided eating lavishly in public to conceal his sudden wealth, perhaps only treating himself occasionally at Jun Rulan's place. But he couldn't go there too often, lest it attract attention. Judging by this, his meals were usually quite meager. Before long, Gu Hunyuan had polished off the entire dog bowl, letting out a satisfied burp. Setting down his chopsticks, he sighed, "Only now do I truly appreciate how much better home-cooked meals taste." I gazed regretfully at the empty bowl, feeling a pang of guilt toward Big Black, who was still playing. Big Black, see what happens when you're too busy playing to eat. "All right, Yuli, now we can talk properly," Gu Hunyuan said, gazing at me with deep affection. "Just the two of us, okay?" I agreed. With the spies who doubled as secret guards protecting me, I wasn't afraid of Gu Hunyuan suddenly turning hostile. "Yuli, I must first apologize. The truth is, I never truly sent Jun Rulan away. I merely rented her a room where she could rest and carry her child. I already knew that. I know this will only make you distrust me more, but since I've come to understand my own feelings, I believe making amends requires honesty first. Rest assured, though, 2 days ago I gave Jun Rulan some money to send her back to her hometown." 2 days ago? Just yesterday the spy reported she was still in that 2-courtyard house. To Gu Hunyuan, moving her out of the thatched cottage must have counted as sending her away. Sure enough, Gu Hunyuan continued, "Truthfully, the place I rented for her to rest during her pregnancy was just a dilapidated hut. I feel rather guilty about that, so when I sent her off, I gave her every last coin I had. Not much, just 10 taels of silver. But I promise, from now on, I'll hand over my entire salary for you to manage. I know you come from a wealthy family, and this is my way of showing my sincerity. My left hand dug into my thigh, desperately trying to stifle the laughter threatening to spill out. This. You don't want the child of Miss June? Gu Hunyuan clasped my right hand tightly. I already said it before, I will only acknowledge the child you bear. I lowered my head and whispered, give me a little more time to think it over. Gu Hunyuan immediately replied, of course. As long as you're willing to give me a chance. As I escorted him to the courtyard gate, he lingered, his face filled with reluctance. I know you might not trust me yet, he said. So I won't insist you stay tonight. But I'll do everything I can to prove my sincerity. Then he walked away, glancing back every few steps. I dashed back inside. Only after the spy confirmed he was far enough away to hear nothing did I burst into laughter. After laughing it off, I had the maid bring my real dinner and ordered the kitchen to prepare another serving of Dahe's favorite dish. Chen Qin said earnestly, I really don't know what's gotten into that dog of a man. Miss, you mustn't let him fool you. Xiaxu chuckled beside me, do you take the young mistress for some naive girl? I merely smiled without reply. I hadn't missed the smug look on Gu Hunyuan's lips as he left. He'd surely make his next move within these 2 days. I didn't have to wait long. The next day, the spy returned with news. Gu Hunyuan had arranged to meet someone at the Hongyan restaurant at noon, reserving the entire second floor and instructing that no one be allowed up. Watching Gu Hunyuan and his counterpart pick and choose, I guess he wanted to avoid restaurants run by the Song family. That's why, after choosing each one last time, he picked this newly opened Hongyan restaurant this time. Too bad, though, Hongyan restaurant was also one I had someone take over and rebrand for me. I sat sipping tea in the tea house next door to Hongyan restaurant. I'd originally acquired it just to link up with Fengqing, sparing regulars the long trek to the Song family's restaurant. Fearing the original owner would demand an exorbitant price, I had someone negotiate on my behalf. Little did I expect that even before announcing I was the true owner behind the scenes, this restaurant would serve such a purpose. I left the reconnaissance to my spies. Unskilled in martial arts, and with the second floor cleared and reserved by them, discovery would spell trouble. Even with the manager covering for me, I doubted the bodyguards accompanying the mysterious figure Gu Hunyuan was meeting today would be pushovers. Best to leave this to the professionals. Just as I finished a plate of dim sum, I suddenly heard the manager of Good Fortune loudly proclaim, what's so great about the Song family anyway? They've just been in the capital longer. Our Hongyun will surpass Fengqing in business sooner or later. A chill ran down my spine, and I immediately stood up to settle the bill. I had instructed the proprietor earlier that once that mysterious man came downstairs, he should seize the opportunity to pick a fight with Xiaxu, whom I had sent to pretend to be shopping nearby. As I reached the entrance of Hongyan restaurant, I indeed saw a man dressed in luxurious attire, accompanied by several others, about to leave. The man was handsome but carried himself with a lazy air. Fearful of giving myself away, I dared not linger my gaze upon him, instead walking straight towards Xiaxu and the proprietor, who were putting on a show of arguing. Yet that single glance was enough to make me feel the man's features were strangely familiar, as if I'd seen him somewhere before. I approached the counter pretending to inquire about the situation. The proprietor deliberately shot back with sarcasm, so this is Mr. Song, huh? Is Fengqing restaurant going under? You're here begging our boss to take it over? Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the man climb into a sedan chair and drive away. Only then did I relax slightly, though I dared not let my guard down completely. With a cold smile, I told the proprietor, soon enough, you'll be calling me boss. Both the shopkeeper and Xiaxu froze, their faces contorting into expressions that seemed to want to laugh but dared not, their cheeks flushing crimson as they struggled to suppress their amusement. And why wouldn't they? Hongyun was now mine, and it was only a matter of time before the staff inside called me boss too. Gu Hunyuan hadn't come out yet, likely afraid someone might notice his connection to the mysterious figure, so he'd wait a while before descending. But whether he came down or not didn't matter. I didn't care. I wasted no more time and left with Xiaxu, leaving the shopkeeper cursing behind us. The shopkeeper put on quite a show. I decided to tip him extra generously later. Back home, my spy reported that the person Gu Hunyuan had met today was none other than the third prince. Gu Hunyuan told the third prince that he had successfully won me over and that I would soon forgive him. Once that happened, all the Song family's assets would be at the third prince's disposal. The third prince praised Gu Hunyuan's actions, urging him to hold on to me firmly. He promised that upon success, Gu would receive additional rewards beyond the position of Minister of Personnel. The moment I heard Minister of Personnel, it suddenly dawned on me why the third prince looked familiar. He bore a striking resemblance to the young man I'd seen months ago accompanying Minister Qi of Personnel. Judging by Qi Zhong's attitude toward that youth, he was likely a prince as well. He appeared slightly older than the third prince, and since the second prince had died young just a few years after his birth, prompting the emperor to order a nationwide mourning period, that youth must be. As for Gu Hunyuan and the third prince, though they hadn't explicitly stated what success entailed, it was painfully obvious. They were plotting a rebellion. Gu Hunyuan truly lacks self-awareness. His intellect is mediocre. His only official post was as a 7th-ranked county magistrate during his provincial assignment. Even after returning to the capital, he was merely a 6th-rank assistant in the Ministry of Personnel. Yet he actually believes he has the capability to become the Minister of Personnel? Clearly, the third prince sought him out solely for the Song family's wealth. He must have warned Gu Hunyuan after hearing rumors that I wanted help to dissolve our marriage, which is why Gu Hunyuan rushed back to show weakness before me. Moreover, now that I'm bound to Gu Hunyuan, if anything happens to him, I'll have to find a way to save him. This troubles me. Divorce will be far more complicated now. Sigh, my judgment back then was truly poor. Had I known this day would come, I never should have agreed to the betrothal with Gu Hunyuan. But since it's come to this, I must find a way to save myself. I dispatched 30% of my spies to gather evidence of the third prince's rebellion. Simultaneously, I made frequent visits to shops, using the opportunity to run into Lady Qi Zhong. While cultivating relationships with the capital's noble ladies, I'd also developed some connection with Lady Qi. This made striking up a conversation with her during our chance encounters much easier. By introducing her to the Song family shop's new arrivals, cosmetics and silk accessories, I successfully befriended her. Meanwhile, evidence of the third prince's rebellion steadily reached me. Though I couldn't uncover more details, what I had should be enough to gain the trust of this Minister of Personnel. Just before leaving, however, I hesitated. It suddenly occurred to me that I didn't know which Prince Qi Zhong supported. The third prince had promised Gu Hunyuan the position of Minister of Personnel. This could mean Qi Zhong would be demoted, but it was also possible he was aligned with the third prince, and if the prince succeeded, Qi Zhong's official standing might even rise further. This lingering doubt was quickly dispelled by Gu Hunyuan's hurried return. "Yu Li, you're heading out? I have something urgent to discuss with you." He seemed somewhat anxious. "I hear you've been spending quite a bit of time with Minister Qi's wife lately? Talk about asking for trouble." I frowned. Madame Qi is a regular customer at the Song family shop. What's wrong with me building rapport with her? Gu Hunyuan visibly relaxed. "Yu Li, I'm not trying to interfere with your freedom. But I've received word that Magistrate Qi might be in trouble soon. It's best you limit your interactions with his wife to avoid being implicated." "Huh? How do you know?" Gu Hunyuan faltered, stammering, I heard it from a colleague at the magistrate's office. So officials at the Ministry of Personnel openly discuss their superiors in public, and you just happen to overhear? This talent for lying. I suspect if I were to defect to the third prince, he'd kick Gu Hunyuan to the curb and grant me a divorce to prove his sincerity. Of course, I'd like to live a few more years, so I won't get involved in such head-chopping affairs. I gave Gu Hunyuan a few perfunctory replies before leaving with Xia Zhu. Before visiting the Qi residence, I stopped by the shop to pick up some newly arrived premium cosmetics. After all, one needs a plausible reason for a house call. Upon entering the Qi residence, Lady Qi welcomed me warmly. She was quite taken with the cosmetics I brought, but insisted on paying for them. I respectfully accepted her offer. After a lengthy conversation, I took my leave of Lady Qi. Stepping out of the residence, I boarded my carriage. As we neared home, I heard considerable commotion outside the carriage. The driver informed me a large crowd had gathered. Stepping down, I saw people clustered before my gate. Upon spotting me, they parted to make way. June Roland knelt before the gate, her noticeable pregnancy belly protruding. Her eyes reddened as she spoke to me. Sister Song, I know it's wrong of me to come uninvited, but I beg you, after I give birth to this child, will you please adopt him? Tears welled in her eyes as she uttered words that left me utterly speechless. You can't have children anyway. If you agree, I promise never to disturb you and Hanglang again. Huh? I can't have children? Those present exchanged bewildered glances. Kind souls pretended not to hear, trying to spare me the embarrassment, while others watched with schadenfreude. I stepped before June Roland. Why would you say such a thing? June Roland bit her lip. Isn't it true? Hanglang has served as an official abroad these past 3 years, and Sister and Hanglang had no children in their first year of marriage. I watched her with keen interest. Oh. Then why not say he's the one who can't conceive? June Roland froze. But I did conceive. That truly was Hanglang's child. And how do you prove that? The surrounding crowd immediately joined in the jeering. Exactly. Who's to say that child isn't actually Lord Goose? June Roland looked utterly humiliated. Sister Song, how? How could you say such a thing? Besides Hanglang, I've never been with another man. I remained non-committal. Miss June, please rise. June Roland's eyes lit up. So Sister Song, you're agreeing to me? Huh? No, I'm just telling you to get up. June Roland's eyes dimmed, then hardened. Sister Song, if you won't agree, I won't get up. Aren't you tired like this? What if you miscarry from kneeling? You'd lose both the child and your chance at a family. I felt exhausted just watching her. June Roland's face turned ashen. I know you misunderstand me, Sister Song, but I swear on the child in my womb, my words today come from my heart. If I break this vow, may I never bear children? No, I was just asking if you're tired. If you lose the baby, I'll. June Roland took my words as consent, her face lighting up with joy. Thank you for your concern, Sister Song. I'm fine, not tired at all. Oh, not tired? Well then, keep kneeling. I brushed past her stunned expression and walked through the gate. Back home, Lulu told me that upon learning June Roland was kneeling outside, Gu Hunyuan had stayed cooped up in his shabby courtyard without stepping out. After a moment's thought, I bypassed my own quarters and headed straight for his courtyard. As I neared, I adjusted my expression, pushing open the gate with feigned fury. Gu Hunyuan. Startled, he scrambled to explain, Yuli, I had no idea she'd return on her own. I never went out to see her. I sneered coldly. Do you know what she's been saying about me outside? She claims I'm barren. After I said this, I clearly saw a flicker of joy cross Gu Hunyuan's face, which instantly turned to shock. She actually said that? I am sorry, Yuli. I truly had no idea she would. I'll go talk to her right now and set the record straight. After Gu Hunyuan left, Xiaozhu asked me in confusion, Miss, what on earth is going on between them? I smiled and told Xiaozhu everything. Upon hearing it, Xiaozhu was first shocked, then furious. She spat out, what a toad trying to eat swan meat. They're dreaming. When Gu Hunyuan returned, he said wearily, I'm sorry for putting you through this, Yuli. I've made it clear to her, told her not to come back. Lying on the couch, I replied slowly, but what about the rumors she's spreading about me? How do you stop gossip? Gu Hunyuan hesitated before saying, I do have an idea, but I don't know if you're still angry with me, Yuli. Go ahead. Yuli, bear me a child. Sure enough, this whole scheme was just to bind me to him quickly. So did Gu Hunyuan even realize his value to the third prince lies entirely in my money? Xiaozhu and the others, who had just heard my analysis, now shot Gu Hunyuan disdainful glances. Yet Gu Hunyuan remained oblivious, still feigning deep affection. You might not accept me right away, but we're meant to spend our lives together. Once you have our child, the rumors will naturally fade. I averted my gaze, clenching the teacup in my hand as I feigned tenderness. Leave. My voice was low. Gu Hunyuan clearly thought I was wavering. He stared at me intently for a moment before declaring firmly, Yuli, I swear on my own future that I will never betray you again. If I break this oath, may my career be ruined and I never rise again. Ha, you and Jun Rolan are truly a perfect match, both love swearing oaths on things you'll never keep. I said leave first. I grew increasingly flustered, catching a satisfied gleam in Gu Hunyuan's eyes out of the corner of my eye. Then I'll step out. Get some rest. After Gu Hunyuan departed, I relaxed. Sigh, putting on a show is exhausting. 3 days later, the Duchess of the State Protection held a flower viewing banquet. Such gatherings typically invited only the capital's noble ladies. But this occasion was unusual. Even I, a mere merchant's daughter, received an invitation. Though I had no idea why the Duchess would extend an invitation to me, the attendees were all guests or potential clients of the Song family. Naturally, I couldn't refuse. I arrived punctually. The Duke of the State's residence was imposing, with winding corridors and spacious interiors. Most of the noble ladies present knew me, and those who didn't had heard of the Song family name. Introduced by others, they treated me with courtesy. A few who prided themselves on their aloofness initially refused to associate with me. Yet, after overhearing my conversations with others, they too became intrigued by the cosmetics, jewelry, and silk fabrics I mentioned. Midway through the tour, a servant from the Duke's residence approached me, saying the Duchess wished to speak with me in the inner chambers. I was puzzled. I had never met the Duchess before. Why would she suddenly summon me to the inner quarters? Yet I couldn't refuse. I pulled aside several noble ladies I knew well, explaining the Duchess had summoned me and that I'd return shortly. I hoped this precaution would help. If anything went wrong, they could recall my promise to return swiftly and send someone to find me. Following the servant through winding corridors, I found myself in a garden instead. This hardly resembled an inner chamber. Regret began to gnaw at me. If only I'd brought 2 secret guards along to this gathering. Master Song, there's no need to be nervous. A figure emerged from around the corner, radiating an extraordinary presence, the very young man I'd seen months ago with Minister of Personnel Qi Zhong. The moment I saw him, my heart settled. I knelt and bowed. This humble maiden, Song Yuli, pays her respects to His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince smiled faintly. Rise, Madam Song. How did you discern my identity? I recounted how I had followed Gu Hunyuan and devised a plan to meet the third prince. I added, furthermore, I observed Minister Qi's respectful demeanor toward your highness that day. Since no other imperial males of your highness's age are currently in the capital, I deduced that your highness must be the crown prince. After all, the emperor's 2 brothers, both infeft as princes, reside in their fiefdoms. Barring exceptional circumstances, neither prince nor their sons may freely enter the capital. I have reviewed the item you entrusted to Minister Qi for my delivery. Yet I never imagined you would approach his wife first. After all, I had no direct means to meet His Highness. Moreover, official and private channels strictly separate men and women. I could neither approach Minister Qi directly nor tell Lady Qi, here is something for your husband, but you must not see it. I had no choice but to take a gamble. Of course, I had heard beforehand that Lady Qi came from a military family, possessed an upright character, and had married Minister Qi in their youth. Their bond was deep and enduring. Fearing rumors might be inaccurate, that Lady Qi might not be as upright and principled as I imagined, I dispatched spies to investigate thoroughly. Only after confirming all was well did I finally decide to visit the Qi residence and entrust the evidence to Lady Qi for delivery. That day, when I went to the Qi residence, I brought not only cosmetics but also evidence of the third prince's plot to rebel. What reward does Madame Song desire? Perhaps I could seize the opportunity to petition for imperial merchant status? But safeguarding the Song family must come first. So I stated plainly, this humble maiden hopes to preserve the Song family. Before that, I wish to dissolve my marriage with Gu Hunyuan. I grant it. And what else? Speak without hesitation. I lowered my head, hesitating awkwardly. This humble maiden wishes to fulfill my father's wish, to expand the Song family business and also serve the imperial court. Wasn't that hint obvious enough? Madame Song intends to use the Song family as dowry to marry into the Eastern Palace as crown princess? This sovereign must give it some thought. Huh? How did the crown prince jump to that conclusion from my words? I looked up in shock, only to see a smile playing at the corner of his lips. Terrified, I knelt back down. Your Highness, please understand. I am already married. After the divorce, I will focus solely on my business. The idea you just mentioned is something I would never dare to dream of. You are truly flattering me beyond measure. The crown prince sighed softly, his gaze fixed on me for a moment before he said, I was only joking, Madam Song. Do not be alarmed. Only then did I breathe a sigh of relief. I have agreed to what you proposed earlier. However, until all matters are settled, I ask that you keep this confidential. This humble maiden obeys. After my meeting with the crown prince, the court was suddenly thrown into turmoil. The emperor unexpectedly bestowed honors upon the third prince, granting him numerous rewards and even appointing him to perform the heavenly sacrifice in the prince's stead. Wasn't the heavenly sacrifice typically reserved for the crown prince? This edict sent shockwaves through the court and the realm. Of course, the common folk carried on with their daily lives, and only the literati among the retired officials paid attention to such matters. As for the crown prince, he seemed to have clashed with the emperor over some matter and was even publicly rebuked by an imperial decree. Around this time, the emperor also began showing signs of declining health. Consequently, some court officials started scheming, and support for the third prince grew noticeably within the court. I don't know any more details, just these vague rumors, all heard from Gu Hongyuan. Why would he mention this? Naturally, because the third prince he followed had gained influence. He'd even forgotten his own name and lineage. Before, he'd know to avoid my servants, but now he bosses my people around daily, his voice 3 times louder. After the heavenly sacrifice, the third prince was even dispatched to manage flood control. Seeing him grow increasingly favored, though still merely a chief clerk in the Ministry of Personnel, he now strutted about with an air of triumph, behaving as if he were already a high-ranking minister. That day before I left, the crown prince told me matters would be settled within a month. He asked me to bear with Gu Hongyuan if he acted out of line during this period. It was because of the crown prince's words that I didn't immediately have them thrown out when I saw Lady Zhou and Jun Rolan sitting smugly in the main hall upon my return home today. Gu Hongyuan, who used to trail behind me, tail wagging, begging for favor, seemed to have finally found his moment to hold his head high. He sat in the chair at the center, the one I usually occupied. Spotting me, he said indifferently, "Sit first. I have something to say." He pointed to a seat, and to my surprise, it was directly below Jun Rolan. His Royal Highness had asked me to endure for now to avoid leaks. Well, as long as nothing leaks, I see no need to endure at all. I immediately signaled to a servant named Lu Jia. Lu Jia understood and strode forward. Under Gu Hongyuan's gaze, shifting from surprise to panic, he yanked Gu Hongyuan off the chair. Servants were strong from constant labor, and Lu Jia was particularly tall and burly. How could a scholarly weakling like Gu Hongyuan resist Lu Jia's pull? He immediately tumbled headfirst from my chair onto the floor. Caught off guard by my actions, he made no effort to resist, landing in a seated position. Thud! Gu Hongyuan hit the floor face first, his arms stretched out at his sides as he hadn't time to adjust his posture, his backside thrust upward. The future Minister of Personnel, Lord Gu, looked utterly disheveled. Madame Zhou and Jun Rolan were both startled into silence. When they finally snapped out of it, they rushed over to help Gu Hongyuan up. "Hongyuan! Hanglang!" Gu Hongyuan groaned incessantly as he staggered to his feet. His forehead was swollen, his lips split open, and blood trickled from his nose. Ignoring his elderly mother and beloved, he glared at me with eyes that seemed to spit fire. "Song Yuli, what the hell possessed you?" I pinched my waist hard, squeezing out 2 tears, and yelled back at him, "Do you remember what you said before? You've been lying to me all along." Madame Zhou kept calling me a jealous woman and a vile creature while lunging forward to strike me. But before the guards could intervene, several servants stepped in front of me, blocking her path. Gu Hongyuan, likely realizing it wasn't wise to completely sever ties with me just yet, forced himself to calm down. "Since things have come to this, I'll be honest with you. The court is on the verge of upheaval. Only by following me can you protect the Song family." I forced a look of utter shock. "What? Have you lost your mind, Gu Hengyuan? How dare you say such things? I haven't lost my mind, nor am I deceiving you. This empire will eventually belong to the third prince. He's long resented the Song family, mere commoners, possessing such vast holdings. Once he ascends the throne, the Song family will be the first to fall. What? I collapsed to the floor in terror and helplessness. Xiaozhu hurriedly supported me, feigning heartfelt concern before the three men. I admit I deceived you before, but I can truly protect your position as the legitimate wife and preserve the Song family's assets. You may hate me, but Uncle Song surely also wishes for the Song family's wealth to be safeguarded and passed down. Hengyuan, why are you still thinking of such a woman? Once you're promoted, just ask the third prince to bestow her family's wealth upon you. Since she married you, her money should rightfully be yours. If she can uphold her wifely duties in the future, you can grant her the status of a concubine. Otherwise, divorcing her would be perfectly normal. Gu Hengyuan shook his head, his expression unwavering. Mother, I was wrong to deceive her. Having promised to uphold her status as my primary wife, I must honor that pledge. I trust Rilon won't hold it against me. Jun Rilon immediately responded with understanding. Of course not. After all, Sister Song married Hanglang first. By both sentiment and reason, she should be his primary wife. Mother, Hanglang, allow me to speak with Sister Song. Jun Rilon glided over, leaning close to whisper in my ear, Hanglang will be infected as a marquis and appointed chancellor someday. You didn't know that, did you? But guess what? Will he still recognize you as his wife then? Be sensible and hand over the Song family's assets. I can still arrange for Hanglang to give you a secure life in your twilight years. I must have looked quite furious and resentful, because I saw a satisfied expression on Jun Rilon's face. I was quite pleased with this reaction myself, though I simply couldn't shed any more tears. Not wanting to pinch my waist again, I mustered all my strength to glare fiercely at Jun Rilon. Jun Rilon straightened up and said gently, Sister Song, I used to believe only in the freedom of love and the invincibility of true affection. But now I understand your feelings of hatred and resentment toward me. As long as you and Hanglang can live in harmony as husband and wife, I can leave this place. She turned to intercept Gu Hengyuan and Mrs. Zhou, who were about to speak. Let's leave first and give Sister Song some peace. After the three departed, I immediately stood up and brushed my clothes, feeling heartbroken. This was made from the finest fabric. I'd sacrificed quite a lot to pull off this act. Xiaozhu and the others also wore sullen expressions. Miss, how much longer are they planning to stick around? I hurried to reassure them. Soon. They should be gone in no time. That evening, I went to Yanlu courtyard to see Gu Hengyuan. Yes, to lull them into complacency, I had withdrawn the guards stationed at each courtyard entrance. After months of praying for blessings at the temple, Zhou Shi finally returned to her cherished Jingchen courtyard. Gu Hengyuan and Jun Rilon, meanwhile, had moved into Yanlu courtyard as they desired. In front of Jun Rilon, I presented Gu Hengyuan with 3 conditions. First, Jun Rilon would never be recognized as the primary wife. Second, only my children would be considered legitimate heirs. Third, Jun Rilon's children could be raised in the Song household, but upon reaching adulthood, they must fend for themselves. Not a single coin of the Song family's fortune would be inherited by them. After hearing my demands, both Gu Hengyuan and Jun Rilon looked extremely displeased. Yet, for the sake of the greater good, they forced themselves to nod in agreement. My conditions weren't particularly watertight. I suspect they agreed only because they believed they could find loopholes. But it didn't matter. I'd made them so harsh solely to gain their trust, to prevent them from suspecting I was too easygoing and harboring ulterior motives. However, Gu Hengyuan also made a request of me. Yuli, the third prince's flood control mission is the emperor's way of testing him. Beyond flood control, there are many disaster victims needing comforting, plus river dredging, embankment construction, and so on. When the third prince appealed for donations the other day, I pledged 30,000 taels of silver, plus grain and clothing. I'll need your help arranging these. I frowned slightly. I'll try my best to gather it. Gu Hengyuan grew impatient at my hesitation. Yuli, 300,000 taels should be a drop in the bucket for you. True, I could spare 300,000 taels. But why should I do you a favor? Why help you earn merit? And you dared publicly pledge such a sum? Your colleagues and superiors must despise you now. Sigh, if only you'd mentioned it sooner, dear. Truth is, the Song family's business has expanded significantly lately, and our silver's all tied up in those ventures. 300,000 taels isn't impossible, but it'll take time to gather. And the grain and clothing you mentioned also need arranging. Gu Hunyuan relaxed upon hearing his grand promise wouldn't go unfulfilled, as long as it's possible. Roughly how long will it take to assemble? 10 days at the latest. With 10 days left before the Crown Prince's deadline, I'd better placate Gu Hunyuan for now. Gu Hunyuan hesitated. 10 days might be too long. Flood control can't be delayed. Yuli, could you try to raise some funds in advance? I refused outright. If I start borrowing money everywhere, other business owners will think the Song family is going under. How would that affect our business? Husband, this is your property too. At the thought of his future assets dwindling, Gu Hunyuan resolved to make a tough decision. Then I'll explore other options. Junyuan still has some jewelry here. Hearing this, I recalled that Junyuan's jewelry was likely purchased with the money I'd given Gu Hunyuan over the past 3 years. June Roland's face turned pale at this, but she couldn't refuse. Forcing a smile, she replied, "Yes, Sister Song. Hanglang and I will find a solution within 10 days." I nodded. All right, it's settled then. I'll do my best to raise 300,000 taels within 10 days. With that, I left. Behind me, the two continued exchanging sappy words. Roland, I'm so sorry for putting you through this. Hanglang, as long as it's for you, these material things. Well, they're gone, but so be it. Their voices drifted far behind me, making me feel a bit sick. I quickened my pace, thinking I'd treat myself to a couple of light dishes from the kitchen to soothe my nerves when I got back. From then on, I left early and returned late every day. In front of Gu Hunyuan, I looked hurried and preoccupied, as if I were busy raising money. In truth, I spent my time eating, drinking, and enjoying myself while inspecting shop operations and reviewing ledgers in a private room at my family's restaurant. Whenever Gu Hunyuan inquired about my progress, I brushed him off with "I'm working on it, I'm working on it." Occasionally, seeing the capital's calm surface made me uneasy. Could this crown prince truly be relied upon? What if the third prince succeeded in his rebellion? Surely he wouldn't actually demand I hand over my entire fortune to Gu Hunyuan? Thankfully, on the 9th night, the crown prince sent someone to deliver a message. Just as I was about to leave the restaurant and head home, a slender, agile woman suddenly leaped through the window. Seeing her startled me. Before I could call for guards, she produced a token. "Master Song, do not be alarmed. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince sent me to deliver a message." The Crown Prince had shown me this token before, saying that presenting it was equivalent to presenting himself. Crafted from rare materials with intricate patterns, it was nearly impossible to forge. I knew instantly that the woman held the genuine article. The Crown Prince is being far too courteous. Sending someone specifically to announce the net closing, if word leaked out, it could spell trouble. His Highness also mentioned he has a favor to ask of Mr. Song. Here it comes, the real purpose of her visit. I wouldn't presume to call it a favor, but what might His Highness require of me? His Highness mentioned that substantial funds are needed for flood control and disaster relief. He hopes Mr. Song will generously contribute. This was understandable. After the third prince's arrest, the emperor would inevitably reassign responsibility for this matter. Securing funds from the court would require various investigations and reports, a lengthy process. Disaster waits for no one. I nodded. His Highness may rest assured on this point. I have already made preparations. After all, a businessman must also cultivate virtue and do good deeds. After returning home, Hongya told me Gu Hunyuan had come to the courtyard gate several times asking where I was. I yawned and said, "If he comes again, tell him everything can wait until tomorrow. I'm going to bed." Early the next morning, I went out to attend to matters and didn't return home until nearly noon. Gu Hunyuan and the other two were already waiting in the main hall. The moment Gu Hunyuan saw me, he stepped forward urgently. Yuli, today is the 10th day. Have you prepared the silver? I sat down in the central chair, accepted the tea Chen Qin had brewed for me, took a sip, and then replied leisurely, of course. I have prepared 1,000,000 taels of silver. Gu Hongyuan's voice rose with excitement. Yuli, you truly are my wise and capable partner. So, where is the silver? I replied earnestly, the flood situation in the affected areas is severe and cannot be delayed. Naturally, I have already donated the 1,000,000 taels. Did you expect me to show it to you first? I've also dispatched people to transport grain, clothing, and other supplies there. I'd gone out early this morning to arrange everything. The Crown Prince had also sent men to escort the supplies. Gu Hongyuan grew frantic. How could you act on your own? But, under what name did you donate the silver? I looked at him in surprise. The money and supplies I provided were naturally donated in the name of the Song family. Gu Hongyuan stumbled back in disbelief. The Song family. The Song family. How am I supposed to explain this to the third prince? Madame Zhou also cried out in distress, you woman. Don't you understand that a wife's duty is to support her husband? A woman's ultimate purpose is to marry well and raise children. What good is building a vast business empire? Besides, the family fortune will eventually pass to Hongyuan's son. Madam, are you so certain Miss June will bear a son? Madame Zhou choked, then retorted, this pregnancy isn't set in stone. Besides, once Hongyuan becomes a high official, he can always take additional concubines. June Roland clearly took offense at the latter remark, but she didn't dwell on it. Instead, she offered a forced smile and chimed in, Mother is right. Sister Song, you've truly erred this time. But there's still a way to make amends. Since you could produce 1,000,000 taels, surely you can scrape together another 30,000? Gu Hongyuan's eyes lit up. Exactly, Yueli. Just find another 30,000 to cover my shortfall, and I'll put in a good word for you with the third prince. I set down my teacup and spread my hands helplessly. Where am I supposed to get 300,000 taels of silver in a flash? How about 3,000 blank banknotes instead? Gu Hongyuan flew into a rage, kicking a nearby chair with all his might. But the chair was made of premium rosewood, sturdy and heavy. His kick only managed to knock it slightly askew, while he himself winced in pain, his face turning pale. Clutching his calf, he gritted his teeth at me. You jealous harpy. My patience with their idle chatter was wearing thin, but just then a servant burst in, Miss. A large contingent of imperial guards has suddenly arrived outside. Gu Hongyuan sneered coldly, the third prince succeeded. Song Yue, you brought this upon yourself. I'm divorcing you right now. According to imperial law, a divorced woman may not reclaim her dowry. If you surrender the Song family's assets, you might save yourself. Pray for your own fortune. I eyed him. You know it's the Song family's assets? That's a nice thought. The imperial edict has arrived. Hearing this, I immediately stood to greet it at the door. But before I could step out of the hall, a squad of soldiers and an eunuch entered. Gu Hongyuan's surprise was tinged with confusion. He was likely wondering how the third prince could issue an edict without news of the emperor's death or abdication reaching the palace. Gu Hongyuan and Song Yuli receive the edict. Gu Hongyuan's expression darkened when he realized I too was to receive the decree, his initial delight fading. I had already guessed most of it. How thoughtful of the crown prince to personally petition for this imperial decree on my behalf. The eunuch began reading the decree. It was indeed an order for Gu Hongyuan and me to divorce. My spirits soared with every word. As soon as the eunuch finished, I prostrated myself in gratitude. This humble maiden obeys the decree. I immediately rose, produced a large ingot of silver, and pressed it into his hands. Thank you for your trouble, sir. May I ask your honorable surname? The eunuch's face lit up instantly. You're too kind, Madame Song. This humble servant is surnamed Fan. Gu Hongyuan turned ashen. He looked at me, then at the imperial decree in eunuch Fan's hand, utterly stunned. No, no. This can't be. Why would His Majesty issue such an edict? I refuse to believe it. Insolent. Eunuch Fan's face hardened. Receive the decree and express your gratitude at once. Song Yuei. Song Yuei. Gu Hunyuan's lips trembled, his eyes bulging with fury. What trick did you use to obtain this imperial decree? Without acknowledging the decree, he lunged toward me. But the man who appeared to be the leader among the officers stepped forward, instantly pressing his head to the ground. Only then did Gu Hunyuan panic. This must be a misunderstanding. Where is the third prince? I demand to see the third prince. Zhou Shi and Jun Rulan, who had been frozen in terror nearby, finally snapped back to their senses. Madame Zhou shrieked, Hunyuan is the third prince's man. How dare you treat him like this? When he reports this to the third prince, you'll all be in for it. The captain sneered coldly, the third prince? He's already been arrested for treason. Gu Hunyuan was struck dumb, muttering, impossible. Impossible. I haven't heard anything about this. I couldn't bear to listen any longer. What nonsense was this? Arresting rebels was done in secret, catching them off guard. How could a lowly lackey like him have heard the news? Eunuch Fan, seeing the pointlessness of continuing, assumed Gu Hunyuan had also received the imperial decree and left first. Gu Hunyuan was arrested on the spot for involvement in the Third Prince's rebellion. According to the law, his relatives were also to be detained. Jun Rulan looked at me imploringly. Sister Song, a night of marriage creates 100 days of affection. You and Henglang were once husband and wife, can you bear to see him suffer in prison? Her words left me utterly baffled. Get this straight, Gu Hunyuan plotted rebellion. How could I save him? I scoffed. Besides, I've already divorced him. And even if I could save him, I wouldn't. Jun Rulan stared at me intently, her face filled with pity. Are you satisfied with this outcome, Sister Song? You may have gotten your revenge, but you'll never win Hengling's love. Gu Hunyuan's love? That worthless piece of trash isn't worth a single copper coin. What use would it be to me? Jun Rulan stared at me in disbelief. You don't love Hengling? I laughed aloud. Do I look like some naive young girl? Impossible. Jun Rulan shook her head, utterly distraught. How could you not love him? How could the female supporting character not love the male lead? She was spouting nonsense again, probably so traumatized she'd lost her mind. Madame Zhou hurled curses at me, you heartless bitch. I should never have let you into the Gu household. I replied calmly, you didn't invite me in. Back then, it was you who entered my Song family's door. Madame Zhou tried to continue her tirade, but soldiers seized her arms and shoved her out the door. Wait! I called urgently. Gu Hunyuan looked at me expectantly. I pulled out several silver ingots and handed them to the captain. Gentlemen, thank you for your trouble. Please divide this among yourselves. The captain initially refused, but I added, there's something I need your help with. With that, I placed the silver directly into the captain's hand. What kind of help do you need, Mr. Song? Releasing prisoners is out of the question. I smiled at him. I've always obeyed the law. How could I ask you to do something like that? The thing is, the clothes and jewelry on Mrs. Zhou and Jun Rulan actually belong to my family. The clothes are one thing, I can't very well leave them naked, but the jewelry. The captain understood immediately and hurriedly said, debts must be repaid. Since these belong to Mr. Song, they should naturally return them. He promptly signaled his soldiers, who proceeded to rip the jewelry right off the two women's heads. The officers showed no mercy, handling them roughly. When the jewelry tangled in their hair, they yanked it out without care, pulling until the women cried out in pain. I watched with keen interest, deliberately ignoring Gu Hunyuan's furious glare. The two had initially resisted, but when they saw the soldiers' hands reaching for their earrings, fearing further punishment, they quickly and obediently removed them themselves. With their jewelry stripped away, their hair disheveled, they dared not utter another curse. They could only follow the soldiers obediently. At the main gate, Gu Hunyuan suddenly addressed the officers as they pushed Jun Rulan out. Your Honor, this woman is not my wife. The child she carries is not mine. She is not my blood relative. Could you please release her? Upon hearing the child wasn't his, Lady Zhou started to scold him, but she forced herself to swallow her words. She likely realized this was also to preserve the Gu family line. Hearing Gu Hunyuan still sought to protect her, Jun Rolan was instantly moved to tears. Hengling, you. Gu Hunyuan turned away, refusing to look at her. I've brought you to this. From now on, our ties are severed. Find yourself a good family to marry into. I was somewhat moved, not expecting Gu Hunyuan to harbor genuine feelings for Jun Rolan. Before the officers could react, someone burst forward from the side. Song Yu Li, you venomous woman. How dare you frame Magistrate Gu? May you die a miserable death. Before she could come within 3 feet of me, my guard kicked her away, sending her tumbling several times across the ground. I looked closely, dusty, disheveled, and ragged. It was none other than Chui Lan, long thought missing. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. What are you doing barging in now? Is Gu Hunyuan really worth all this for you? Chui Lan spat out bitterly. What do you know? Magistrate Gu has been so good to me. After I left the Gu household, I had nowhere to go. All he had on him back then was the 10 taels of silver you gave him, yet he shared 5 taels with me. I swore then that I'd follow him for the rest of my life. I stared in disbelief. But I gave Gu Hunyuan 50 taels back then. Gu Hunyuan seemed to recall something, suddenly flustered. He frantically signaled to Jun Rolan, urging her to flee. Yet Jun Rolan remained lost in the warmth of Gu Hunyuan's devotion. Seeing his panicked expression, she only gazed back at him with deep affection, failing to grasp his warning. Chui Lan froze in disbelief. You're lying. Magistrate Gu said you only offered him 10 taels. I glanced at Gu Hunyuan and chuckled. Gu Hunyuan, why don't you explain where the other 45 taels went? The moment I spoke, it dawned on me. Ha, what a joke! That was obvious. I turned my gaze to Jun Rolan. Chui Lan, not being slow, grasped the situation immediately, though she still harbored doubts. Gu Hunyuan was still desperately trying to defend himself. Chui Lan, don't listen to Song Yuli's lies. I only received 10 taels. I only gave Rolan 5 taels. Jun Rolan, initially bewildered by the revelation of Gu Hunyuan and Chui Lan's affair, now seemed to be gradually piecing things together. Yet Gu Hunyuan had genuinely treated her well before, and just now he'd been solely focused on protecting her. So after the initial shock, Jun Rolan remained temporarily speechless. I said to Chui Lan, after you left the Song household, I gave Gu Hunyuan 50 taels. Later, Jun Rolan moved into a 2-courtyard residence outside. You see. Gu Hunyuan finally snapped out of it. You were following me? You knew all along? You did this on purpose? I nodded honestly. Gu Hunyuan spat out a mouthful of blood, his voice filled with bitter hatred. A woman's heart is the most poisonous. Seeing this, Chui Lan could no longer remain oblivious. She stood there, frozen in shock. The officers, growing impatient, shoved Chui Lan aside. Unrelated parties, step back. They were about to continue escorting the 3 prisoners to the jail. But in an instant, the situation changed. Chui Lan suddenly lunged at Jun Rolan. Caught off guard, Jun Rolan was shoved and fell heavily to the ground. My stomach! My stomach! Jun Rolan cried out in terror. Gu Hunyuan roared, Rolan. Blood flowed steadily from beneath her. Chui Lan stood beside her, laughing like a madwoman. Madame Zhou, upon seeing this, wailed, my grandson. She immediately fainted. After this chaotic uproar, the officers had to summon doctors for Jun Rolan and Madame Zhou. By the time everything was settled, much time had passed. Seeing how exhausted they were, I slipped a few ingots of silver to the captain. Chui Lan, though not directly implicated, was also taken away for causing Jun Rolan's miscarriage. When all was settled, I patted my chest. That was truly terrifying. Shortly thereafter, the 3rd prince was demoted to commoner status and exiled to guard the late emperor's tomb. The 2 princes residing in their fiefdoms appeared implicated as well. Like the 3rd prince, they were stripped of their titles and had their domains confiscated. This leniency stemmed from the emperor's consideration for familial ties. As for the other conspirators and accomplices unrelated to the emperor, they didn't fare so well. They were imprisoned, beheaded, and had their families' assets confiscated. Some even saw their entire clans implicated and punished. Rumor has it the emperor had previously feigned illness to lull the rebels into complacency. But these matters are none of us common folks' concern. I also sent people to inquire about Gu Hongyuan and the others. Though Gu Hongyuan participated in the rebellion, his low rank meant he never received crucial intelligence. Moreover, he offered no financial or influential support to the third prince, so his sentence was ultimately exile. Once, a clerk I sent on business returned and reported seeing Gu Hongyuan in his place of exile, ragged and torn, laboring while enduring the shouts and beatings of the guards. Upon seeing the apprentice, Gu Hongyuan immediately dropped his load and wept, lamenting that his life there was worse than death. He begged the apprentice to relay a message to me, hoping I would spare him out of old affection and use my connections to save him. After being kicked over by the apprentice, he was dragged back by the soldiers and brutally beaten again. I paid the servant a reward and instructed him to pretend he never saw Gu Hongyuan if he encountered him there again. After receiving the money, the servant readily agreed. Zhou sure suffered a stroke from the immense shock. Officials summoned doctors, but she could not be saved. She passed away within days of being imprisoned. Jun Rolan, having lost her child and never having formally married Gu Hongyuan, was released after the authorities verified these facts. Informants reported she subsequently descended into madness, muttering, "I want to go home." One day, her body was suddenly discovered in the outskirts, pale and emaciated, her mouth stuffed with grass roots, tree bark, and dirt. The sight was truly heart-wrenching. Cui Lan was sentenced to 40 lashes for her assault. With nowhere else to go in the capital, she left before her wounds had healed. The Song household servants celebrated the departure of these individuals by setting off several strings of firecrackers. Though not a holiday, the scene felt quite festive. Months later, the emperor issued an edict abdicating the throne in favor of the crown prince. The Song family received an imperial decree for the second time. The new emperor declared that the Song family had rendered meritorious service in exposing treason and managing flood control. Thus, he bestowed upon them the title of imperial merchant, granting them the privilege of direct audience with the emperor. The familiar eunuch Fan once again delivered the decree. After announcing it, he grinned and congratulated me. "Congratulations, Mr. Song." "Oh, no, I should say Lord Song now." I accepted the imperial edict with a smile and slipped him a silver ingot larger than the last. After exchanging a few polite words, he hurried back to report. After seeing him off, I returned home. There, I found Uncle Feng, the steward, and Xia Zhu directing the servants as they pasted celebratory red paper. The Jingchen courtyard and Yanlu courtyard must be thoroughly cleaned. Burn everything those people used. Straighten that banner. Xia Zhu spotted me and hurried over. "Miss, it seems Mr. Li and the others got word early. They've all sent invitations, wanting to host banquets in your honor." I smiled as I stepped into the hall. "Very well. Bring them all to me for review tonight." The end.